The year was 2177, and humanity had spent 30 long years among the stars. First contact had come in 2147, when a Vethrani scout ship discovered Earth and its strange, resilient inhabitants. The aliens had expected to find primitive creatures struggling to survive on their harsh world. Instead, they found a species that had already split the atom, walked on their moon, and sent probes to distant planets. But the Vethrani were not impressed. They looked at Earth and saw a death world. The gravity was crushing by galactic standards. The weather was violent and unpredictable. The planet was filled with predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would have wiped out most species. That humans had survived at all seemed like a cosmic joke. The Galactic Concord, an alliance of 12 spacefaring civilizations, welcomed humanity with cold politeness and nothing more. They gave Earth a seat at the table, but it was in the back corner where no one had to listen. Human ambassadors spoke at council meetings, but their words fell on deaf ears. Human traders tried to establish commerce, but they faced tariffs and restrictions that made fair business impossible. Admiral Catherine Cole had served in the Earth fleet for 25 years. She had watched her species crawl into space with hope in their hearts, only to have that hope crushed again and again by alien arrogance. Now she stood on the bridge of the Defiant, Earth's most powerful carrier, reading yet another diplomatic insult. The Vethrani ambassador had given a speech to the full Concord Assembly. In it, he called humans biological accidents and evolutionary mistakes. He argued that allowing Deathworlders into civilized space was dangerous, like letting wild animals roam free in a city. The Assembly had laughed. Some had applauded. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price approached with a tablet in his hand. He was young, barely 30, but his eyes held the same weariness that Cole saw in every human who dealt with the Concord. "Another ship seized, Admiral," he said quietly. "The cargo vessel Horizon. 18 crew members taken into Kethra custody. No charges. No explanation." Cole took the tablet and stared at the report. The Kethra Dominion was the Concord's military arm, a reptilian species that enforced galactic law with brutal efficiency. They had been seizing human ships for years, always with some excuse about border violations or contraband. Earth filed protests. The Concord ignored them. "How many this year?" Cole asked. 14 ships, 231 citizens held without trial. In Geneva, on a planet that suddenly felt very small, Secretary General Maria Santos called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Representatives from every nation gathered in the Great Hall, their faces tight with frustration and anger. "We cannot continue like this," said the delegate from Brazil. "Our people are being kidnapped, our ships are being stolen, and the Concord does nothing." "What would you have us do?" asked the delegate from Japan. "Go to war? Against 12 species with fleets that dwarf our own?" The debate went in circles, as it always did. Some called for patience, arguing that humanity was still young among the stars. Others demanded action, though they could not agree on what form that action should take. Secretary General Santos listened to it all, her face a mask of calm hiding a storm beneath. Far from Earth, on the frontier of human space, Captain Nathan Brooks sat in his quarters aboard the destroyer Ironside. His ship was old, patched together from salvage and determination. His crew was tired. They had spent months patrolling borders that aliens crossed whenever they pleased, enforcing treaties that only seemed to apply to humanity. Brooks watched the broadcast from Geneva on his personal screen. He had heard these arguments before. Nothing ever changed. The Concord would keep pushing, and humanity would keep bending, until one day they broke completely. The breaking point came 3 days later. New Providence was a young colony on the edge of human space. 20,000 people had made their homes there, farmers and miners and families looking for a fresh start. They had built their settlement on a world that the Concord had deemed worthless. a planet with soil too poor and weather too harsh for any civilized species to want. But humans wanted it. Humans could make anything work. The Vethrani patrol fleet arrived without warning. 12 warships dropped out of hyperspace and took position around the planet. Their commander broadcast a single message. New Providence was in violation of territorial boundaries established by the Concord. The colonists had 1 hour to evacuate. There was no way to evacuate 20,000 people in an hour. There were not enough ships, not enough time, not enough anything. The colonial governor sent desperate messages to Earth, to the fleet, to anyone who might help. The hour passed. The Vethrani opened fire. Their plasma weapons turned farms into craters. Their missiles struck population centers without mercy. 8,000 people died in the first wave of bombardment. Men, women, children, families huddled in shelters that offered no protection against orbital weapons. By the time Earth's response reached the Concord, New Providence was burning. Admiral Cole received the news on the bridge of the Defiant. She stood perfectly still as the reports came in, her face showing nothing. But her hands, hidden behind her back, were clenched into fists so tight her knuckles went white. "The Concord's official response," Price said, his voice hollow. "They express mild concern over the incident. They suggest that humanity should have consulted before establishing colonies in disputed territory." "Disputed," Cole repeated. "We settled that world 15 years ago? They never said a word?" "They're saying words now, Admiral. They're calling it a regrettable misunderstanding." Cole turned to look out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, 8,000 of her people were dead. Murdered by aliens who would face no consequences, who would sleep well tonight knowing they had taught the Deathworlders another lesson about their place in the galaxy. She thought about 30 years of insults, 30 years of patience, 30 years of hoping that if humanity just tried hard enough, worked hard enough, proved themselves enough, the Concord would finally see them as equals. That hope died with New Providence. Cole opened a secure channel to Earth Command. The face that appeared on her screen was Secretary General Santos, looking like she had aged 10 years in a single day. "Admiral," Santos said, "I assume you've seen the reports?" "I have, Madam Secretary." There was a long silence. Both women understood what came next. They had prepared for this possibility for years, hoping it would never come, knowing it probably would. "It's time," Cole said finally. "Prepare the broadcast." Santos nodded slowly. "God help us all." "God helps those who help themselves," Cole replied, "and we've been waiting for help long enough." The channel closed. Cole turned to face her bridge crew, seeing the same cold determination in their eyes that burned in her own heart. "Set Condition 1 throughout the fleet," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to every human ship in known space. It's time the galaxy learned what Deathworlders can do when they stop being patient." The broadcast began at midnight, Earth Standard Time. It was not an accident. Humanity wanted the galaxy to wake up to a new reality. Every human ship, station, and communication relay carried the signal. It spread through space at the speed of light, reaching Concord listening posts within hours. By morning, it had touched every corner of civilized space. Billions of aliens watched their screens as Admiral Catherine Cole appeared before them. She wore her dress uniform, medals gleaming on her chest. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiant was visible, crew members working at their stations with quiet efficiency. Cole looked directly into the camera, and though her voice was calm, there was something in her eyes that made even the proudest Vethrani feel a chill. "For 30 years, she began, humanity has sought peace. We came to the stars with open hands and hopeful hearts. We asked only for a place among you, a chance to prove ourselves worthy of partnership." She paused, letting the words settle across 100 worlds. "Instead, you gave us contempt. You restricted our trade. You ignored our voices. You seized our ships and imprisoned our people without cause or justice. When we asked for fairness, you laughed. When we demanded respect, you offered scorn. On the Vethrani homeworld, the High Council watched with growing unease. They had expected protests after New Providence. They had expected angry words and empty threats. This calm, measured speech was something different, something dangerous. You called us primitives, Cole continued. Savages from a death world, too brutal to deserve a seat at your table. You measured our worth by your standards and found us lacking. The image changed. Footage appeared showing human soldiers training in conditions that would kill most Concord species. Marines crawled through mud under live fire, their faces set with determination. Pilots pulled maneuvers that would crush Vethrani bones. Engineers worked in toxic atmospheres without protective suits, their bodies adapted to hardships the galaxy could not imagine. You never considered that your standards were the wrong measure. You saw our harsh world as a weakness. You were wrong. Earth did not break us. Earth made us strong. Fleet Commander Lucas Grant watched the broadcast from his command chair aboard the heavy cruiser Avalanche. His third strike group floated in formation near Kethra Space. 47 ships crewed by men and women who had spent their lives being told they were inferior. Now those same people checked their weapons and waited for orders. Grant's encrypted instructions had arrived hours ago. He knew what came next. We gave you 30 years of patience, Cole said on the screen. 30 years of trying to earn what you would not freely give. That patience ended at New Providence. 8,000 of our people died because you believed we would not fight back. You were wrong about that too. Secretary General Santos appeared beside Cole, her presence adding the weight of civilian authority to the military message. We do not seek conquest, Santos said. We do not want your worlds or your resources. We want only what every thinking being deserves, recognition as equals. Since you would not grant it through diplomacy, we will take it through strength. The broadcast cut to a star map. Red dots appeared across known space, marking the positions of human fleets. Lines extended from each dot, showing their destinations and objectives. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was secret. Humanity was declaring open war with complete transparency. These are our fleets, Cole explained. These are their targets. We will strike your military installations, your supply lines, your ability to project power. We will not attack civilian populations. We are not monsters, despite what you believe about Deathworlders. Captain Amy Harris stood in the mess hall of the frigate Relentless, surrounded by her crew. They watched the broadcast together, some with tears in their eyes, others with grim smiles. Harris had lost her brother at New Providence. She had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment, taking her ship deep behind enemy lines. This is not revenge, Cole was saying. Though our dead cry out for justice, this is a correction, a lesson you refuse to learn peacefully. We hope you learn it quickly. We hope this war is short, but make no mistake. We will not stop until you recognize us as equals, true equals, with all the rights and respect that implies. On the Kethra border, defensive stations scrambled to high alert. Commanders shouted orders. Ships rushed to intercept positions. But they were already too late. Human fleets had been moving for hours, using jump drives that the Concorde had dismissed as unstable and dangerous. By the time the broadcast ended, the first battles had already begun. Cole's image returned to fill the screen. Her voice dropped, becoming almost intimate, as if she were speaking to each viewer personally. You thought we were beneath you. You thought that because we came from a harsh world, we were less civilized, less worthy, less real than you. You were wrong. She leaned forward slightly. We are Deathworlders. Our ancestors survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They fought predators with nothing but rocks and determination. They crossed oceans in wooden boats and climbed mountains that tried to kill them. They did not survive by being weak. They survived by refusing to give up. The bridge crew of the Defiant worked silently behind her, each one a testament to human resilience. That same strength flows in our veins. That same determination beats in our hearts. We did not become the dominant species of Earth through timidity. We will not become second-class citizens of the galaxy through cowardice. Secretary General Santos spoke the final words. When you are ready to treat us as equals, we will be ready to talk. Until then, consider this your education in what Deathworlders can do when they decide to stop being patient. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, silence fell. Then, slowly, chaos erupted. The Vethrani High Council demanded immediate retaliation. The Kethra Dominion mobilized their entire fleet. Smaller conquered species began evacuating their border colonies, suddenly realizing that the primitives they had mocked for 30 years had been building something terrible while they were not watching. Captain Nathan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Ironside, watching his crew prepare for battle. These were the same people who had spent years being humiliated, being told they were not good enough, being treated as something less than sentient beings. Now they moved with purpose, with pride, with the knowledge that they were finally going to fight back. "All stations report ready," his first officer announced. Brooks nodded. "Then let's go remind the galaxy why they should have been nicer to us." The Ironside jumped to hyperspace, joining the flood of human ships racing toward their targets. The war had begun. On the Defiant, Admiral Cole watched the fleet dispersal on her tactical display. Hundreds of green dots spreading across the map, each one representing thousands of determined humans ready to die for recognition they should have been given freely. "Do you think they understand yet?" Price asked, quietly. Cole shook her head. "Not yet, but they will." She turned away from the display, her face set like stone. "They will." The Battle of Valar Station began in the dark hours before dawn. Fleet Commander Lucas Grant brought his third strike group out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 47 ships appearing like ghosts against the black canvas of space. Before them hung the massive orbital platform that served as the Kethra Dominion's forward command post, protected by 60 warships that had never known defeat. The Kethra commander was named Vossarath. He was a veteran of a dozen campaigns, a warrior who had crushed rebellions and enforced Concord law across half the galaxy. When his sensors detected the human fleet, he felt nothing but contempt. 47 ships against 60. The Deathworlders were either stupid or suicidal. "All ships, advance to intercept," Vossarath ordered. "Standard engagement pattern. Destroy them quickly." His fleet moved with practiced precision, spreading into the classic Concord formation that maximized firepower while minimizing casualties. It was a strategy designed for careful, measured warfare, where both sides traded shots at long range until one withdrew. Grant watched them come. He had studied Concord tactics for 20 years, looking for weaknesses that others missed. Now he would exploit every one of them. "Tactical assessment?" he asked calmly. Lieutenant Commander Sophie Walsh studied her displays. She was young but brilliant, recruited straight from the academy for her ability to think 3 steps ahead of any enemy. "They're expecting us to mirror their formation," she said. "They want a long-range duel where their numbers give them advantage. Then we disappoint them. All ships, execute pattern Omega-7. The human fleet did something the Kethra had never seen. Instead of spreading out, they pulled together, forming a tight wedge with the heavy cruisers at the front. Defensive fire overlapped, creating a wall of destruction that vaporized incoming plasma bolts before they could strike. Then the wedge charged. Vossarath watched in disbelief as the humans accelerated directly toward his line. This was madness. This was suicide. No sane species engaged in close combat when they could fight safely from distance. But humans were not born on safe worlds. They did not think like other species. The Avalanche took point, her reinforced hull absorbing hits that would have crippled Vethrani cruisers. Railguns fired in coordinated volleys, solid projectiles accelerating to incredible speeds before smashing into enemy shields. The kinetic force was something conquered ships were not designed to handle. Their energy barriers flickered and failed under the brutal assault. The first Kethra destroyer exploded 3 minutes into the battle. "They're breaking formation," Walsh reported, excitement creeping into her voice. "They don't know how to handle close-range engagement. Don't let them regroup. Pursuit groups, engage." Human ships peeled away from the main wedge, hunting down fleeing enemies with predatory efficiency. The Kethra tried to create distance, to return to the long-range combat they understood. But human vessels were faster, more maneuverable, crewed by people who had spent their lives fighting against impossible odds. On Valar Station itself, alarms screamed through every corridor. Commander Paul Gibson led the 1st Marine Battalion through the breached airlock, his soldiers pouring into the station like water through a crack in a dam. The Kethra defenders met them with plasma rifles and desperation. They were taller than humans, 7 feet of scaled muscle with 4 arms evolved for their low-gravity homeworld. In theory, they should have torn the Marines apart. Theory met reality and died. Gibson's soldiers moved through the station with brutal efficiency. They fought in gravity that made the Kethra sluggish, breathed air that burned their lungs but did not stop them, took wounds that would have killed most species, and kept fighting. A Kethra officer cornered Gibson in a supply room. The alien towered over the human, all 4 arms raised to strike. "You cannot win," the Kethra snarled. "You are insects fighting giants." Gibson smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Insects survive," he said. "That's what we do." He moved faster than the Kethra expected, inside the alien's reach before those 4 arms could grab him. His combat knife found the gap between armor plates. The Kethra fell. Across the war zone, similar scenes played out. Admiral Cole's main fleet struck the Vethrani border fortifications, overwhelming defenses that had stood for centuries. Captain Brooks and the Ironside led a squadron against listening posts in neutral space, blinding Concord intelligence networks. Captain Harris took the relentless deep behind enemy lines, hitting communication relays that connected the 12 Concord species. The aliens had underestimated human technology. For years, Earth's scientists had worked on jump drives that the Concord considered dangerously unstable. Too much could go wrong, the aliens said. The energy requirements were too unpredictable. Better to use the slower, safer methods that civilized species had perfected over millennia. Humans did not have millennia. They had determination and a willingness to take risks that terrified more cautious species. The result was a fleet that could appear anywhere, strike hard, and vanish before reinforcements arrived. The Concord's superior numbers meant nothing when they could never bring those numbers to bear. Secretary General Santos addressed the Concord Council from Earth, her image broadcast across 12 homeworlds. "We have no interest in genocide or subjugation," she said. "We want only what you denied us, recognition as equals. When you are ready to negotiate on those terms, we will stop. Until then, consider this your education in human resolve." The Vethrani ambassador sputtered with rage. The Kethra representative made threats that rang hollow now that human ships were burning through his people's defenses. Smaller species watched in terrified silence, suddenly understanding that the primitives they had dismissed had been preparing for this day since first contact. On Valar Station, Gibson found himself face to face with a Kethra prisoner. The alien sat in a holding cell, staring at the human guards with something new in its eyes. Fear. "You fight without environmental suits," the prisoner said. "Our atmosphere is toxic to most species." Gibson removed his helmet and took a deep breath. The air was thick with chemicals that made his eyes water and his throat burn. He had trained for months to tolerate it. "We adapt," he said simply. "It's what Deathworlders do." Word spread through conquered ranks faster than any official communication. Humans could survive poison air. They could fight in crushing gravity. They could take injuries that would kill a Vethrani soldier and keep coming. They were not the weak primitives the Concord had believed. They were something else entirely, something terrifying. By the end of the first week, humanity had won 17 major engagements. The Concord had lost over 200 ships. The myth of alien superiority lay shattered among the debris fields of a dozen star systems. Admiral Cole received the reports aboard the Defiant, her face showing nothing as she read casualty figures on both sides. This was not a war she had wanted, but it was a war she intended to win. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Maintain pressure. Don't give them time to adapt." The galaxy had spent 30 years teaching humanity that they did not belong among the stars. Now humanity was teaching a different lesson, and the galaxy was learning. 3 months into the war, the galaxy looked different on every star map. Human fleets controlled 47 systems. The Vethrani homeworld sat behind a blockade of Earth ships, its supply lines cut, its population growing desperate. The Kethra Dominion had lost half its military strength. Smaller Concord species whispered about surrender, but victory had a price that grew heavier with each passing day. Admiral Catherine Cole stood alone in the Defiance Memorial Hall. The walls were covered with names now, thousands of them, etched into metal plates that would carry their memory across the stars. She read them one by one, though she knew she would never finish. New names appeared faster than she could learn the old ones. 23,000 human casualties, ships turned to wreckage, colonies damaged by counterattacks, families destroyed by a war that should never have happened. The door opened behind her. Captain Nathan Brooks entered quietly, his uniform showing the wear of 3 months without proper rest. The Ironside had limped home from a devastating engagement near the Vethrani core worlds. Half his crew would never see Earth again. "Second thoughts, Admiral?" he asked, standing beside her. "Every day." Her finger traced a name on the wall. Lieutenant Jessica Moore, killed during the Valar assault. 24 years old. She had written poetry in her spare time. Her parents had received her final letter yesterday. Every single day. But Cole turned to face him. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and something deeper. "But then I think about New Providence, about every human held in alien detention centers, about every time we were told to know our place, to accept that we would never be good enough." She looked back at the names. These people did not die for conquest. They died so their children could walk through the galaxy with their heads held high. "That's what I tell myself, too," Brooks admitted, "on the nights when I can't sleep." On the Vethrani homeworld, the High Council gathered in their ancient chamber. The room had witnessed 1,000 years of victories, 1,000 years of decisions that shaped galactic history. Now it echoed with the sound of arguments and blame. "The humans must be stopped at any cost," declared High Counselor Vethron, his purple scales flushed with anger. "They are animals. They fight without honor, without proper respect for the rules of war." "The rules of war?" another counselor replied bitterly. "We killed 8,000 of their civilians at New Providence. We started this." "They were colonizing territory we claimed. Territory we never used. Territory we never wanted. We killed them to make a point, and now that point is being made back to us 1,000 times over." The argument raged on. Some wanted to continue fighting, convinced that the Concord's greater resources would eventually overwhelm humanity. Others saw the truth in their casualty reports. Human tactics were unlike anything they had encountered. The Deathworlders fought as if they had nothing to lose, taking risks that no civilized species would consider. In another part of the galaxy, the cracks in the Concord were spreading. The Methani Collective, a minor member species, sent a secret message to Secretary General Santos. "We wish to discuss separate terms," the Methani representative said. Her form was delicate, almost fragile, evolved on a world of gentle winds and soft rains. "Many of us never supported the treatment of your people. We were simply afraid to speak." "Why speak now?" Santos asked. "Because fear of humans has become greater than fear of the Vethrani. You have shown that strength does not require cruelty, that power can be wielded with restraint." The Methani paused. "We would rather be your friends than your enemies." It was the first break in the alliance. Others would follow. Fleet Commander Lucas Grant pushed deeper into Vethrani territory, but his reports to Earth grew increasingly concerned. His soldiers were exhausted. His ships needed repairs that field facilities could not provide. The human fleet had proven it could win battles, but holding conquered space was a different challenge. "We're overextended," Grant warned in his latest transmission. "The crews are running on stimulants and determination. We can keep winning fights, but eventually something will break." Admiral Cole received his message aboard the Defiant. She knew he was right. The war had reached a tipping point. Pushed too hard, and the human military might collapse from exhaustion. Pull back too soon, and the Concord might find the will to continue fighting. Captain Amy Harris provided the intelligence that changed everything. She had taken the Relentless on a reconnaissance mission deep behind enemy lines, following rumors of secret Vethrani research facilities. What she found made her blood run cold. "They're developing biological weapons," Harris reported, her face pale on the communication screen. "Targeted agents designed to attack specific genetic profiles. Admiral, they're building a plague meant to kill only humans." The bridge of the Defiant went silent. Biological warfare had been banned by every civilization in the Concord, considered too terrible even for war. But the Vethrani were desperate, and desperate species did terrible things. "How close are they to completion?" Cole asked. "Months, maybe weeks. The facility is heavily defended. We don't have the forces to take it without massive casualties." Cole closed her eyes. She had started this war to win recognition for humanity, not to risk extinction. But if the Vethrani succeeded, if they released a plague designed to kill every human in the galaxy, then all the sacrifices would mean nothing. "Can we destroy it from orbit?" she asked. "Negative. They built it deep underground, under a civilian city. We'd have to kill 1 million Vethrani to reach it." There it was. The impossible choice that Cole had always feared. Victory was within reach, but reaching for it might turn humanity into the monsters the Concord had always claimed they were. Secretary General Santos contacted her that night. The leader of humanity looked as tired as Cole felt. "The Methani offer is genuine," Santos said. "If we accept, others will follow. The Concord is fracturing. But if word gets out about the biological weapons program, our own people will demand total war. And if we launch total war, we become what they said we were." "Exactly." Cole stared at the star map on her wall. 47 systems under human control, millions of aliens living under human military administration. A war that had proven everything humanity claimed about itself and threatened to destroy that proof in the same moment. "We need to end this," she said finally, "before it ends us." "What do you suggest?" Cole thought about the names on the memorial wall, about the colonists of New Providence who had died without warning, about 30 years of insults and indignities that had led to this moment. Then she thought about what humanity wanted to become. Not conquerors, not destroyers, not the monsters that the galaxy feared. "We offer terms," she said, "generous terms. We show them that Deathworlders know how to win, but we also know when to stop." And if they refuse? Then we destroy the weapons facility and accept whatever comes after. But we give them the choice first. We give them a chance to remember that we're the ones who wanted peace all along. Santos nodded slowly. I'll draft the proposal. The communication ended. Cole sat alone in her quarters, listening to the hum of the ship around her. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were fighting and dying for a recognition that should have been given freely. Somewhere else, millions of aliens were learning that the primitives they had dismissed were capable of incredible things. The war had proven its point. Now came the harder part, ending it without losing everything they had fought for. The broadcast that ended the war was shorter than the one that began it. Admiral Catherine Cole stood before the cameras one more time, but now Secretary General Maria Santos was at her side. Behind them, the bridge of the Defiant hummed with quiet activity, a reminder of the power that humanity could bring to bear if it chose. Humanity has demonstrated its capabilities, Santos began. Her voice carried across the galaxy, reaching every world that had watched the war unfold with fear and fascination. We have shown that Deathworlders are not primitives to be dismissed. We have proven that our patience, while vast, is not infinite. She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that held both strength and sorrow. But we are not conquerors. We did not reach the stars to dominate others. We came seeking community, partnership, respect. If the Galactic Conquered is willing to offer these things genuinely, we are willing to stop. The terms were broadcast alongside the message. Full membership in the Conquered with equal voting rights. Release of all detained human citizens. Reparations for New Providence and other attacks on human settlements. Formal recognition of human territorial claims established over the past 30 years. In exchange, humanity would withdraw from occupied systems. Prisoners would be returned. Trade would resume under fair terms. The war would end. On the Vethrani homeworld, the High Council debated for 6 hours. The hardliners demanded continued resistance, claiming that accepting human terms would be eternal shame. The moderates pointed to empty chairs around the table, seats that belonged to counselors who had died when human ships broke through their defenses. In the end, mathematics won the argument. The Vethrani fleet was broken. Their economy was collapsing under the blockade. The Kethra Dominion had withdrawn most of its forces to protect their own territories. The conquered alliance that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was falling apart. We accept, High Counselor Vethran said finally, each word tasting like poison in his mouth. We accept your terms. The treaty signing took place on neutral ground, a station in unclaimed space that had never belonged to any species. Representatives from every Concord civilization attended. Some willing, others compelled by circumstances they could no longer control. Admiral Cole represented the human military. Secretary General Santos signed on behalf of Earth. The ceremony was brief and formal. There were no celebrations, no smiles, no pretense that this was anything other than what it was, the end of one era and the beginning of something uncertain. After the signing, the Vethrani ambassador approached Cole. His posture was stiff, his pride wounded, but not quite broken. You have humiliated us, he said quietly, so that others would not hear. Cole met his eyes without flinching. You humiliated yourselves. We simply held up a mirror. The ambassador's scales flushed with anger, but he said nothing more. There was nothing left to say. Captain Nathan Brooks watched the ceremony from the iron side, now repaired and returned to service. His crew gathered on the observation deck, staring at the station where their future was being decided. Some looked relieved. Others seemed lost, uncertain what to do with themselves now that the fighting had stopped. Was it worth it? Lieutenant Commander Sophie Walsh asked him. She had transferred from the Avalanche after the Battle of the Vethrani Core Worlds, one of the few survivors of that terrible engagement. Brooks thought about the question carefully. He thought about the names on memorial walls across the fleet, the friends he had buried in the cold vacuum of space, the nightmares that would follow him for the rest of his life. "Ask me in 10 years," he said finally, "when human children grow up knowing they don't have to bow to anyone, when our colonies thrive without fear of alien inspections, when we sit at the council table and our voices actually matter." That's not an answer. "No," Brooks admitted, "but it's the best I have right now." The transition was not smooth. Old prejudices did not vanish simply because a treaty had been signed. Some Concord species still whispered about Deathworlders, still clung to their beliefs that humans were savage and dangerous. But they whispered quietly now. They never said such things where humans could hear. The Methani collective became humanity's first genuine ally. Other species followed, drawn by the recognition that Earth's victory had changed the balance of power forever. The galaxy was reorganizing itself around a new reality, one where the primitives from the Death World had earned their place among the stars. Fleet Commander Lucas Grant retired from active service. The war had broken something inside him, left him tired in ways that rest could not fix. His final report to Earth Command was simple and direct. "We set out to prove that humanity deserved respect. We succeeded. Let us hope we never have to prove it again." Admiral Cole remained in command of the fleet, but its mission changed. Instead of conquerors, her ships became peacekeepers, watching over the treaty they had fought so hard to achieve. She spent her remaining years ensuring that the Concord honored its commitments, her presence a silent reminder of what happened when they did not. Secretary General Santos was elected twice more, guiding humanity through its integration into galactic society. She often quoted a phrase that became humanity's unofficial motto. "We came in peace. We left in peace. What happened in between was your choice." Historians would debate the war for centuries. Some argued it could have been avoided, that better diplomacy might have achieved the same results without bloodshed. Others claimed that violence was the only language the Concord truly understood, that humanity had done what was necessary. Captain Amy Harris, retired now and teaching at the Naval Academy, gave her students a different perspective. "The galaxy learned something important about us," she told them during her final lecture. "They learned that Deathworlders don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive, and when pushed too far, we push back." She smiled, the expression carrying 30 years of struggle and 3 months of war. They also learned something else. They learned that we know when to stop, that we can be strong without being cruel. That victory doesn't have to mean destruction. She looked at the young faces before her, the next generation who would carry humanity forward. That's the harder lesson. Anyone can learn to fight. Learning when not to fight is what makes us worthy of the stars. The last veteran of the war died 70 years later, an old woman named Catherine Cole, who had once commanded the mightiest fleet humanity had ever built. Her final words, whispered to a granddaughter who barely understood their meaning, became a prayer for generations to come. "Remember what we fought for. Not conquest, not revenge, recognition, the right to stand tall, the right to be seen as equals." She closed her eyes, and her voice faded to nothing. Never let them forget. The galaxy never did. In council chambers and trading posts, in diplomatic meetings and military academies, the story of the Deathworlders spread and grew. How they had endured decades of contempt. How they had answered violence with violence, but restraint with restraint. How they had won a war and then chosen to end it before victory became something darker. Other species studied humanity with new eyes. Some feared them, some admired them, all respected them. On Earth, children grew up knowing that they belonged among the stars. They walked through spaceports where aliens of a dozen species made way for them. They attended schools where human achievements were taught alongside the great accomplishments of galactic civilization. They inherited a galaxy that saw them as equals. That was the victory. Not the battles won or the systems conquered, not the treaties signed or the reparations paid. The victory was recognition. The victory was respect. The victory was proving that Deathworlders, born on a harsh world of gravity and storms and endless challenges, could rise to meet the stars and claim their rightful place among them, and the galaxy, having learned its lesson, never forgot.